The things we know best are the things we haven't been taught. And this is a quote by J.R.R, however you say his name. I don't know. I don't speak that language. Maybe you know how to speak it better than me. But here is actually an excerpt from Leo Tolstoy, who's known as one of the greatest writers of all time. And I title this as Just Living Life. Nope, you can't do that. Because Leo is really telling us here how a man of our times can't live their own life in their own peaceful living. They have to, in some way, be coerced or coerce others. They can't just live a peaceful, voluntary life. That's just impossible. And this is the world we live in. If we really want to face the reality and ask ourselves the question, like, why is the world so bad, or why things just keep heading in a bad or confusing direction, or, confusing is enough to say it's bad because people are like always frantic and worried and having debates and arguments with each other and divided among ideology. That should be telling already of itself, like something's not right and something needs to change, especially when you have psychologists like Stanley Milgram, even Jordan Peterson nowadays, who are warning about the world and how if there were concentration camps in America, there'd be plenty of people willing to support that system because they have the same mindset that those in Nazi Germany had, or Soviet Russia, or whatever. And that is particularly really dangerous because people don't see then their own mentality, their own belief system, which is why in my book Slavery Gone for Good, I talk about this concept of mental slavery as being the worst form of slavery. So what does it mean? Why am I saying that we can't just live our own lives? Let's delve into this.
I'm an abolitionist.
A man of our time lives, doing his work or enjoying himself, employing the fruits of his own labor or those of others for his own sake or for the sake of those who are near to him, like any other man, despising all kinds of oppressions and privations, hostility and sufferings. The man lives peacefully. Suddenly, people come to him, who say, in the first place, promise and swear to us that you will slavishly obey us in everything that we shall prescribe to you, and that everything we shall invent, determine, and call a law, you will consider an indubitable truth and will submit to. In the second place, give part of your earnings into our keeping. We shall use this money for keeping you in slavery and preventing you from forcibly opposing our decrees. In the third place, choose yourself and others as imaginary participants in the government, knowing full well that the government will take place entirely independent of those stupid speeches which you will utter to your like, and that it will take place according to our will, in whose hands is the army. In the fourth place, appear at a set time in court and take part in all those senseless cruelties which we commit against the erring man, whom we ourselves have corrupted. And finally, in the fifth place, besides all this, though you may be in the most friendly relations with people belonging to other nations, be prepared at once, when we command you, to consider such of these men as we shall point out to you your enemies, and to cooperate personally or by hiring others in the ruin, pillage, and murder of their men, women, children, old people, and perhaps your own countrymen, even your parents, if we want it. It is necessary for us, as in the case of the rural judge and the peasants, to continue to flog one another, consoling ourselves with the thought that the fact that we prattle in chambers and assemblies, form labor unions, parade the streets on the 1st of May, form plots, and secretly tease the government which flogs us, that all this will have the effect of freeing us very soon, though we are enslaving ourselves more and more. What Leo Tolstoy is saying here is that by participating in this system whatsoever, we are allowing this system to be continually legitimized to do the harm which we're trying to prevent. He says nothing so much impedes the liberation of men as this remarkable delusion. Instead of directing all his forces to the liberation of himself, to the change of his world conception, every man seeks for an external aggregate means of freeing himself, and thus fetters himself more and more. It is as though men should affirm that in order to fan a fire, it is not necessary to make every coal catch fire, but to place the coals in a certain order. What importance can there be in such phenomena as the refusals of a few dozens of madmen, as they are called, who do not wish to swear to the government or pay taxes or take part in courts and military service? These men are punished and removed, and life continues as of old. It would seem that there is nothing important in these phenomena, and yet it is these very phenomena that do more than anything else to undermine the power of the state and prepare the emancipation of men. They are those individual bees which begin to separate from the swarm and fly about, awaiting what cannot be delayed, the rising of the whole swarm after them. The governments know this and are afraid of these phenomena more than all the socialist, communist, anarchists and their plots with their dynamite bombs. So that's it. Those are the excerpts from Leo Tolstoy, and they're just powerful to hear these words. And again, this is about like 200 years ago at this point. And it's amazing how a lot of people are familiar with Leo Tolstoy, but the words he says, they're so direct, they're so just like in your face, like this is what's happening in our world, and this is how we get out of it. And the way he says to get out of it is stop paying taxes, stop contributing to the system. But so many people are not going to say that as a solution. They're going to say like, let's vote, let's change the politician, let's think of a better system, and like let's map it all out, and then like we have to plan it all out. Tolstoy's just saying like, no, you got the truth. It's called Jesus, it's called God, it's called natural law, it's called morality, and everybody generally knows what's right and wrong. So why do you need the law to tell them? Like, we need some scribbles on a piece of paper that's going to change reality? Like, we need to give people the right to rule over others with the power to do violence to others? Like, that's what he says. He says all law is violence. That's basically what it is. And if people want to help each other and do good, they don't need an authority or the right to rule to do good. You know, it's like if somebody wants to be a cop and protect other people's rights, they don't need to be a cop in order to protect other people's rights. Or they could say they're a cop, but they don't have any more special rights than everybody else. And so like he understood this 200 years ago. This is still a very foreign concept to a lot of people today. But even further foreign is like the action toward how we solve this mess. And that's not by voting somebody in office or changing the law. It's by directly saying no. And literally just saying no. As simple as that sounds, that's what it takes. And if you can have overnight one town saying no, this whole mess would be gone. And I don't know if those big influencers out there who see the world's problems realize that it's that simple to change the world, is just having a community saying no. And then encouraging other communities to say no and showing why you say no. And that's where the education comes in. And you can say it's part of this process right now, which is why I make this video, because you have to build up to that point of, I have the courage, I have the bravery, I'm willing to say no. It really needs to be a willing choice. And I think even J.R.R Tolkien, the writer of The Lord of the Rings, he was also known as an anarchist. He said no man is fit to rule over another. He said this in his own journal as well. And the Shire had no government. He said that in his journal. It's part of the movie. I did a whole presentation on that if you're interested. But he also said that the act of abnegation is the most powerful act to change something, and that's the willful denial of something, right? It's not ignorance. It's willfully denying something because you know it's not true. You know it's something that you shouldn't do. And even Mark Passio says no is this lost word in Freemasonry, so clearly he sees that as the solution. Larkin Rose says the solution is just talking to our fellow men and realizing we're all just human beings. Well, if that's really simple, right? It's like just realizing we lived with a superstition, a belief system that was wrong. Well, then we have to admit that we're wrong. And then if we admit that we were wrong, we just say no to those things that are wrong. And that's it. It's like we don't really need to think of all these different like terminologies, ways within the system to get out of the system. It's like, no, it's really just that simple. In every revolution in history, most of them were over taxation. You can look at Gandhi, you can look at the American Founding Fathers, you can look at the Quakers, and they were often very successful because they were also non-violent resistances. Not the American Revolution, that's one of the exceptions, though that one is still debated among a lot of people at the time, was like, could it have been done peacefully, and could that have made an even better impact? I mean, a lot of people have not really investigated that one, but there were writers talking about it. Definitely the abolitionists, who were not so long after the Founding Fathers. Again, I go over that in my book, Slavery Gone for Good, really deep into it. And it's funny because Tolstoy mentions military service. There's something called military slavery that a lot of writers talked about. They talked about this whole idea of laws and governments. They called that political slavery. And then, the economy that it creates, economic slavery. And then, when these centralized systems are in control of technology, that's technological slavery. And then when they're in control of the medical side of things, that's medical slavery. So everything violence touches, everything slavery touches is going to turn into slavery. As Henry David Thoreau says, slavery begets slavery. And then I think Frederick Douglass said that too. I mean, I have like literally hundreds of quotes within that book and tons of examples. So I don't know what's enough for people. When it comes to action, when it comes to knowledge and how we change the world condition, what's a better subject than slavery? And Tolstoy, probably the only other individual who talked about the slavery of our times, is what he called his work. The closest thing to the work that I created, talking about how we're enslaved in the modern day. And the way to get out of it, he says, as simple as just saying no and refusing to partake in the system. It really is that simple. Share this video with everybody out there who wants to know the action. Like, what did we do? I want to know the action. Well, let me just tell you just how simple it is, and nobody's willing to tell you because they're afraid. They're afraid of telling you, just say no. Because it's so much nicer to just say, well, this law says this, and if you sign your paperwork a certain way, or let's vote for this politician, let's have a whole talk about it, we can make our whole channel about it, and it's also very comfortable for people, it gets the views, it gets the attention. Well, that's why I need your help to share videos like these. So thank you very much for watching theliberator.us, that's theliberator.us, and as your article, I'll turn to a video for you. Thank you for watching.